G'day fellas and welcome to a casted game. Spawning in on the east side of the map, in the colour red, playing as the Delhi Sultanate, it's Tips AoE. And on the west side of the map, in the colour pink, playing as the Abbasid dynasty, it's Wham01. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lipany. We're here watching two of the world's best players go up against each other rather. I mean, they're probably going up against Lipany as well, because this map, it is a cracker of a map. I love playing on Lipany because you never know what you're going to get. You could get Dry Arabia, you could get Altai. Actually, it's a little bit closer to Mountain Pass, I think, Lipany sometimes. Sometimes you get some really silly spawns, but it looks like it's been a pretty liberal generation of cliffs this game. You never know what you're going to get with Lipany, but these players, I'm sure they'll be rejoicing at the fact that it is very, very open. I definitely prefer when it's open, though, even though I'm a bit more of a boomer, and I'm not just talking about the type that likes economic units, I still kind of like the, I still kind of prefer it when it's a bit open. It gives you that pathway down the middle. So, anyway, make sure you check out Tips on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can watch him live. Of course, Wham also streams over on Twitch, but he's nowhere near as active, so look, I'm still going to recommend you go over there and check him out, but Tips is probably live right now. That guy he is relentless with his streams, and he's always asking for tips. That's the thing I love about the Tips. The first time I played against him, I played like an hour-long game against Tips, and at the end, he asked me, he's like, do you have any tips? I'm like, well, I guess that's where you get your name from, isn't it? It just makes perfect sense. Your name is Tips, and you ask for tips. I did give him some tips, and it was basically, you did good, but this matchup's very, very hard. If I remember correctly, it was China. We played China versus Ottomans, and it was on Lipany. And it was on Lipany with a crazy bad spawn. And it was just a case of like, I think at that point, with the meta, the way that it worked, was pretty much that China just always won that matchup, because you could go 2TC and the Ottomans couldn't do anything about it. But I think it's switched a little bit now. Ottomans are a little bit more capable. Or at least the build orders that they do are a bit more capable. Now, Wham is going to be looking to age up very, very shortly. We can see he's close to clicking that button. Now, one thing to note is we do have the trade post in this west corner, right up against the edge of the map, but he's going to go economic wing. So just going to be sticking it out here. Going into the eco wing, looking to reduce the cost of the town centers down, obviously reduces the cost of farms, reduces the cost of houses, lumber camps, all of that good stuff, as long as you research Fertile Crescent. On the other side of the map, we do see Tower of Victory. We can start to talk a little bit about this matchup, something that I frequently cover on my Patreon when I'm doing coaching sessions, which, by the way, if you're interested in, make sure you check it out. But one of the things I often cover on Patreon is the Delhi Sultanate and the fact that they've got a game plan. And when you're playing against the Delhi Sultanate, you want to stop it, and when you're playing as the Delhi Sultanate, you want to secure that game plan. So the first step in your Delhi Sultanate game plan is always going to be looking to secure sacred sites. Now, when you secure sacred sites, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. Sometimes we'll see players look to bring a villager out and start building an outpost. Sometimes that can be dropping down a barracks in the Dark Age as you're in the transition and getting some early spears out so that you can start walling in these sacred sites. You want to look to start securing the sacred sites. You don't have to. You can just play naked. You can you can just go raw dogging sacred sites if you want. That's absolutely fine. But obviously it makes it a little more difficult to hold those sacred sites. But number one is going to be capturing sacred sites. So making sure that you've got control of at least one of those sacred sites is really nice. Get that gold trickle going. Look to get up to the castle age. Make sure you don't die. Make sure you maintain control of your food sources. And once you're in the castle age, from there you're going to be looking to pick up relics. There's plenty of relics out on this map, 5 relics in total. 4 of them are going to be pretty easy for Tips to pick up, and obviously that 5th one, it's not too snug back in the base. Sometimes you can get those relics that spawn like really, really badly up along the backside, but this one's pretty good. I think you should be able to go and sneak this one, so should get 5 relics here. And then from there, you've got a couple of victory conditions, but that's essentially it. It goes sacred sites into relics into winning. That's how you play it. We do see the age up now coming through. Over on the other side of the map, though, Wham with Fertile Crescent begins, as well as we see the you know what? I should probably address it. The term raw dogging, obviously, it's got a connotation there. Well, not even a connotation. I mean, it's obviously what it means. But I love that it's become a bit more of a, I wouldn't say an acceptable, but I definitely think it's got a bit of shock value there. Like, I remember reading something about a person who, it must have been like one of those, my main social media is Reddit. I could browse Reddit for days, but obviously Reddit is just like a culmination of all other social medias just getting posted there. You see Tumblr, Twitter, basically, you know, every social media just gets reposted to each other anyway. So at this point, it doesn't really matter what you use. It's about what works for you. But for me, it's Reddit. And I just remember seeing this post, and it's like, it was something about about having depression but not taking antidepressants being the equivalent of just like raw dogging life right now. Like that was essentially it. It's just kind of stuck with me until then, and it's funny hearing people in the way that they use the word, because it does have that shock value. So I apologize if I've upset or offended any of you people from the North American region. I know that you guys are typically a lot more likely to get offended than anybody else in the world. So look, you probably got offended by me saying that. Here I am just like actively shitting on like half of my viewer base. Sorry guys, I think that's kind of like the Australian way. I will say that an Australian way of friendship is that you actively banter with each other, and it can get quite serious, the banter, but I think that as you become better friends with people, at least in an Australian context, the more banter you will throw at them, and the more hurtful it could be. Oh geez, we're a sad suck. We're a sad bunch. Anyway, Tips now moving out with some early horsemen. Running an interesting strategy. We see this quite a bit where players kind of looking to deviate away from just running infantry only. So moving into horsemen, obviously going to force his enemy into archers, or rather going to be forcing them into spears, and then he's going to be able to move into archers himself to try and back it up, because Wham's going to be on the defensive here. There's a couple of ways he can look to play it. Obviously, camels are going to be a big component of this, but we do see with Wham putting down that town center on the stone, it's definitely going to indicate, hey, I'm playing 3 TC. So this is very greedy from Wham. I'm curious exactly how this is going to go. Obviously, for anybody who's unfamiliar, Wham is like, he's an incredible player at the moment, sitting, or he's top 16, I can tell you that much, because Red Bull Wallalol went. He was doing very well well, I'm not going to say he did very well in Wallalol. Spoiler alert, he didn't do that well in Wallalol, but he made it to Wallalol, which means that you're top 16 in the world. So he is a very good player. Obviously, Tips a Conqueror 3 player, so also really good, and manages to actually trap the villager. Does go down. It's going to be 6 shots that do it. And the barracks does come up, so forcing out some spears. So expect to see the archery range thrown down on the other side of the map any second. Any second. There it is. So really good timing here from Tips. He knows exactly what he's up to. Now, this is the magical moment. The magical moment that I often talk about. So you've got Sanctity about to come in. You can see 7 seconds away. So number one move that Tips needs to make right now is pop these scholars out of his mosque, and he needs to make sure these guys are out on the map. Now, one of the interesting things to note is Tips hasn't gone for a second mosque. He's just got the single mosque, and with no Dome of the Faith, it means that he's only got the 2 scholars in his repertoire at the moment. I don't know if repertoire is the right term, but yeah, he's only got the 2 scholars, which means he's only going to be able to take or challenge 2 sacred sites, which also makes it easier for his enemy, because now they've only got to defend those 2 sacred sites. So these are all factors. And now you can see by going for infantry a little bit later here, it means that the walls are going to come up a little bit later as well. First of the sacred sites is going to come through. Remember that spears are being made on the defensive. There's also a scout here as well, so expect these to be challenged. We do now see we're right on board with Wham, as that scout is going to start moving down towards the south side. And this is the consequence, right, of not having those 3 scholars. Because if you've got the 3rd scholar, he's standing up here and you've got a guaranteed sacred site. But now all of a sudden, you've got 1 sacred site that is being contested, 1 sacred site that is also being contested, and the other one which just sits free. So I wouldn't necessarily say a mistake coming out from Tips, but it is a consequence of not going into that second mosque. Obviously, looking for a little bit more aggression in this game. Wants to get out of the box there a little bit earlier. Needs to make sure that scholar moves on. We can see he's really suffering down on the south side here, as the sacred site is unfortunately not going to be coming up. So maybe a little bit of an oversight there from Tips in not going into the defensive position on that as early as he could. But we'll ride on board with Wham in a bit, or for a bit, as his villager count really starts to improve. He hasn't spotted the sacred site up towards the north. He knows it's up here somewhere, so he's just looking for it now, but obviously that's going to trigger off as soon as he comes through. The consequence of not having those spears is that this sacred site, and Wham just doing the perfect thing. This is exactly what you want to be doing, buying so much time on this sacred site. Ideally, this why do I keep trying to say sacred shite? It was a holy... we're talking about the Lord's poop here. We're talking about the Pope's poop. Speaking about the Pope, have you guys seen that image of him wearing the Gucci? Oh man, isn't that just so beautiful? Like, obviously it's AI generated, and the fact that it fooled the world, but it's amazing, man. AI has come so far. It's starting to get scary. I've been a big fan. There's a great YouTube channel called AI Explained. And I think, you know, in life, it's rare that you find something that you're passionate about. But for me, I'm really passionate about AI. I think it is incredible just how far it's come in the short amount of time that we've got. And I think the most amazing thing about it is the fact that we are at the point in time where it's going to be the worst. right now, it doesn't get worse than this. I mean, obviously, you look beforehand and you go back to the good old days where AI wasn't obviously as good as GPT-4. But it only gets better from this, or from here. And already, like, we're talking about AGI already. For anybody who doesn't know, that's Artificial General Intelligence, which is where it becomes... look, I'm getting sidetracked. This isn't an AI YouTube channel, but it damn well could be. I can say that much. All right, well, Tip's doing a pretty good job. Honestly, the fact he's secured up 2 sacred sites is really nice. The way that Wham's challenging this 3rd sacred site, it might not look like it's... It might not look like it's going well for Wham at the moment, the fact that his enemies captured 2 sacred sites, but remember, Wham is scaling. The more time Wham buys here, the better, because his main threat in this situation is a sacred victory. So the fact that this sacred site isn't captured is great for Wham, because that sacred timer isn't ticking. Tip's in this position, the number one thing he wants to be looking for is dropping down keeps on the sacred sites. Make sure he secures that. He can look to potentially push the base of Wham, but with Camel Archers on the defensive, it's going to make life really, really hard, especially if you end up going into something like Men-at-Arms as the Delhi Sultanate, because Wham is very happy to play it out in feudal. We'll make sure we switch it over, though, so that you guys can see the income for each of these players. Wham's going to be suffering a couple more villager losses. He's lost 3 already, and you'll be quickly going up to 5. A little bit of an attack in the middle. Spears need to be mixed in here for Tips, and he starts adding them in. Very well timed here from Tips, so great job by him. Now, the one thing that Tips needs to look out for is making sure he doesn't spend too much time in the feudal age. He needs to get up to that castle age quickly. He needs to make sure village fortresses starts getting researched immediately, because that's going to be his late game guarantee. If he doesn't get up, if he doesn't start working on that village fortresses, he's not really going to have much to save him in the late game. Now that 3rd sacred site is being captured. Sacred site on the south side has been pretty well defended here. There's still a way through, and this is the problem when you don't wall a sacred site completely. If you go for a wall like this in the front, you can just send a single horseman down here. You just right-click on the sacred site. They'll find their own way. And to be honest, I don't like that. I think that they should always take the shortest route to the sacred site, and if they get blocked by a wall, then they just stand at the wall. That's how it should be. AI... It's funny, we're talking about AI right now, but the unit AI shouldn't be able to work out that there's a wall across here and that it needs to run it around to the sacred site. At least that's the way I like to think about it. But anyway, battering ram moving forward, going to be looking to neutralize the sacred site. A little bit of a solo intervention here. What do we got here? Wham moving the battering ram back and then bringing it back forward. So maybe realizing that it's just not the right time to challenge the sacred site, potentially. Oh, this is what it is. So Wham is so good at this. Wham attacks the north sacred site, knowing that the units are going to be drawn up there. Wants to make sure that the battering ram doesn't get cleaned up in the process. But look at this, Wham going to be dealing with a counterattack, because Tip's not going to be falling for it. Upgrade still yet to come through. Didn't he go double? He went double blacksmith here. Why is he so slow to get his upgrades in? He should have had double upgrades by now. We're at the 13-minute mark. Anyway, Combat of the Defender is coming through, and Tips is in a pretty decent spot. He's got all 3 sacred sites, but this one in the north, this is the problem that Tips has got, is his sacred victory timer has been delayed. In a perfect world, he should be 5 minutes through his sacred victory timer right now, but he's not. And I think that is definitely a bit of a failure on the part of Tips, in just that we didn't get that 3rd scholar out. Now, making that 3rd scholar obviously a little bit hard, because you need a second mosque to do it. But that's part of the reason why it's so important, especially in the matchup against the Abbasid dynasty, a civilization that just loves to spend time in the feudal, likes a little bit of time just to get going. They're similar to the Ottomans in that regard. But at this point in time, it looks like he's just going to be slowly but steadily holding the center. Needs to fall back. Honestly, this is probably the time to fall back. You don't really want to take this fight now. You want to wait till your Men-at-Arms. You want to wait till your Knights come through. And ideally, you'd like to wait for veterancy upgrades, but with a lack of scholars, he's only got 4 out at the moment. It's going to take a long time. We do see the upgrades are coming through. Village fortresses. It's going to be 5 minutes away. And Tips is running for dear life. Sacred site still not captured. Things starting to go from bad to worse as Wham able to defend up on a 36 villager difference now. Horsemen coming through, looking to tee off towards that backside with the archers. And just the horsemen alone are going to be able to run a rampage over this army. Now Tips needs to fall back towards I mean, where does Tips go from here? Honestly, now that I think about it, is there any real window for him? Because ideally, it should have been all 3 sacred sites into Men-at-Arms Knights, pushing this back. This is a tough spot for him, though. That is definitely the case. There's the Men-at-Arms now. Going to get caught out with the horsemen. Lancers are on the field. Relics getting picked up as well. We hear 3 of them picked up so far. One of them's a little bit too far away. Second one is snug behind a wall, so I don't know whether he's going to be getting that. He could definitely look to sneak it. Battering ram. Look at this battering ram. The solo battering ram. Who thought battering rams were going to be this relevant in Season 4? I tell you what, they are a unit, that is for sure. Villager's going to get caught out of position. And now Tips scrambling to try and make a defense here. He's going to be looking to try and find the archers. We'll be able to get them. Plenty of armored units in here. Just going to be tanking up all the damage. Battering ram now single-handedly solving that problem on the south side. Meanwhile, Camel Archers in the middle going to be looking to repel out more units. And you can see just how much damage is coming through. That +1 ranged armor. Really helpful in this situation. But the Horsemen on the front line should be able to screen for these units. Nice little defense here from Tips. So now the men-at-arms together with the Lancers should be able to hold. So this is where it gets tough for Tips. Tips needs to go into keeps. He needs to start taking stone all around the map. He needs to make sure that he takes this stone outcropping, move from this one up to the next one. He needs to drop down a lot of keeps. And the thing is, with your keeps, you don't want to go too aggressive. If you go too aggressive with your keeps, you're going to be in a bad spot. And speaking of bad spot right now, camels together with spears is not a good time for these Lancers, and Tips throwing them away. The unit numbers here looking really solid for Wham. He's got double the military pop of his opponent, so just able to overwhelm that extra armor that these guys have got on them. So really nice little spot. And now I'm going to start working on that second sacred site in the center of the map. Obviously, the battering ram down towards the south side did face a bit of a gloomy end, going the way of the dodo. Get your bingo cards out. You know, the reason why I say that is I just remember somebody, I think someone posted it at in a YouTube comment. They like linked the time that I said it and they said bingo. Like, I've filled out my bingo card. I've got bingo. That's all the Drongo quotes that I need. You know, I actually remember this has been one of those videos where we just kind of ramble on all different tangents. Potato McWhiskey, if any of you guys know Civilization or the game Civ, he's a creator for that on YouTube. I watch a lot of his content back when I used to play Civ. Him and Filthy Robot. Filthy Robot is a big inspiration for me. Yeah, so Filthy Robot and Potato McWhiskey. Anyway, Potato McWhiskey was watching some of my content. And the only reason I know is because someone tagged me in a comment and said, hey, Drongo, Potato McWhiskey watches you. And he mentioned me because he said something that I had said. You know, one of those words that I rely on, he said it in his videos because he was watching me too much. And it was like, it was a beautiful time to be alive. But speaking of beautiful times to be alive, these villagers, it is not a beautiful time to be a villager right now. All three sacred sites do get recaptured up. Still yet to secure this sacred site in the north. I would love to see some keeps getting thrown down. Obviously, we've got the first keep that's out towards the front of the base here for Tips. This is a great little spot for it. Going to defend the gold, defends this avenue into the base. One less thing he needs to worry about. But he wants to start adding in more keeps because we've got village fortresses that is not too far away here. And look at Wham just all over the map. Tip's still finding some decent raids back here. Villagers getting caught out of position, heading over towards that food source. And now more and more units as Wham starts to wall up, making the right choice. You want to be walling up plenty here. Look at the Knights. Both of these players have been doing a pretty decent job with their raids so far. Tip's actually taking out 3 times the amount of vills that Wham's has been able to take out, though. To be honest, Wham's feeling pretty good about himself, though, as more vills going to be going down here on this south side. Numbers up to 9 now. So moving on to stone, doing the right thing. And wants to start using these village fortresses. So village fortresses might be able to keep Tips in the game. The problem is that Wham didn't go 2 TC, he went 3 TC. Which means that at this point in the game, Wham is about, if I had to do the math, I'd say 30 villages ahead of where he would be if he was on 2 TC. That's the difference that we're talking about here. War elephants are out. Looking to change things. And still Tips pushing in with just low numbers of units here. Upgrades starting to come through for Wham. Veterancy on the spears together with +1 melee armor and boot camp, which is going to increase the health of all of his infantry. Nice little cleanup from Wham. Wham just playing a really methodical game. And just keep in mind, we're at 18 minutes into this game. Sacred Timer is non-existent here. And that's the big threat. That's the huge threat. When you're playing this matchup, when you're playing as the Deli, you always want to be looking for that sacred victory. And oftentimes it can just be about getting the gold from the sacred sites, but more often than not, it's about actually securing the sacred sites and looking for that sacred victory. But now, once again in the center of the map, Wham's got a beautiful little concave here. Tips needs to be careful. Not a whole lot of scholars out on the field. Only the 2 for the moment. Stacking up a fair bit of gold back there. Is he looking for additional keeps? I wouldn't be surprised if we see more get thrown down. Just the 1 for the moment that I can see, but you guys do know the rules. That's the second one. I am legally blind. Okay, Siege Workshop going to get thrown down. Interesting choice from Tips going into the Siege Workshop. He's really struggling, definitely on the back foot here. And it's looking more and more likely like Wham's position is good. It is a very good position. I would much prefer to be Wham here because the tempo is now in his favor, right? He's double the villager count of his enemy. And it's going to take a while before Tips is able to reach parity with his enemy. Now, keep in mind that villages are now being produced here from the keep. The keeps are used as town centers not only to produce villages, but also to drop off resources. You can drop off resources at the town centers, or at the keeps. So that means that you can come down here, look to put a keep on top of this gold vein. That way it's protecting the gold vein and the sacred site. At the same time, towards the north, you can put a keep down on this stone, look to protect the sacred site and the stone. There's great ways that you can utilize the keeps. And now all 3 sacred sites are slowly but steadily getting neutralized. I tell you what, early on, Tips had some chances. But it looks like Wham is just being methodical here in his defense. And now goes for a counter keep. Looking to force this back. And the single elephant is going to be struggling here. Tips, I'm sorry, my friend. But that's way too many units for you to deal with. He's going to try and keep it alive. Falling back, just relentless raids coming through. Wham suffering. Or rather, Wham causing the suffering. And now a little bit of a spearman raid coming through. Springer emplacements, looking to try and defend. Vil's going to be scrambling, running for their life. A lot of production in here. So this Abbasid 3 TC is definitely solid. I mean, often we talk about which wing is the best wing. And the eco wing is definitely one that has yet to fall out of favor. A lot of people still preferring it here. Even when the option of trade. And, you know, trade is the mechanic that all of the pros are complaining about. We've seen protests from trade. And yet still Wham's like, actually, I don't need trade. I can win without trade. And he's doing a solid job, honestly, at the moment. With this sacred site in the middle of the map, it almost just guarantees this position. There's no threat of sacred victory. The tempo now in favor of Wham. And Tip's going to be struggling to keep his head above water. And you can see that even throwing down additional keeps here, he's gone for 2 extra keeps. He's only going to be maintaining parity with Wham, not going to be surpassing him. And good game just gets called. There's way too many units. Tip's going to tap out. And Wham going to be victorious. Rather, Wham going to be the winner. Tips taps out, Wham the winner. There you guys go. A little bit for you. Anyway, go check out Tips. Go check out Wham. I'll leave links in the description. Thank you guys for watching. And the power of the Abbasid continues to rise in this Season 4.